How did your affair start?
From the other perspective, but I was seeing this girl for 4 months, let's call her Sam, that I met while she was working at a bar downtown. We were practically in a relationship but never really had the talk. We went on a bunch of dates together, she met my co-workers and I hung out with her and her roommates often. One day I'm over at her place drinking with her and the roomies, and towards the end of the night we decide to go into her room to do the deed. Suddenly Sam starts acting really strange and quiet. I ask her if she wants to stop and she says yes, so I do and ask her what's up. She is reluctant to tell me anything, so I decide, you know what, I'm just gonna leave and we can talk about this later. As I'm walking to my car that's parked on the street, I'm met at the end of the driveway by a dude that looked familiar. I realized as he got closer that this was Sam's ex-boyfriend that I've seen pictures of posted a year before on Instagram. As he walks by me he threatened me if I ever came back here. I was a bit of a cocky poo and said, why the F shouldn't I come back? He then tells me that he knows I've been effing his girlfriend, to which I said, you guys have been broken up since the summer. I just left and decided I'd confront Sam about this later. Turns out the ex was right and I'd been helping her cheat on her boyfriend for the last 4 months. The most effed up part? Her roommates and friends were in on it the whole time. This woman wanted to meet my daughter too. So glad I dodged that bullet.
My wife let a friend borrow a hooded sweatshirt one evening while she had a fire and a few friends over. Her friend washed said hoodie and returned it. My wife rainwashes it because she doesn't like her fabric softener. There was a pair of her friend's underwear stuck in the sleeve of the hoodie that came out in our washer machine. I get home from working and she accused me of cheating after a massive fight, and me racking my brain, she called her friend and confirmed it's her black thong.
Everyone immediately jumps to cheating.
Was once accused of cheating. Front passenger seat on my car was moved too close for any guy to sit, and my then GF demanded to know who I'd had in my car. I told her it was Chris, a co-worker. She came storming into my company the next day, demanding to see Chris. Imagine her face when she found out Chris was Christopher, a little person. He stood 4 feet 2 inches. I milked her apology for a decade.
So, wait, you're just not allowed to have women in your car? I don't understand how the problem here is. She effed up because she thought a guy couldn't be short, and not, she thinks evidence of a woman just being in her boyfriend's car means he's cheating.
When my wife found a napkin in my pocket and swore it was not her lipstick. I had no idea how it got inside my pocket. After months of her thinking I was cheating, at lunch one day I was eating a sandwich and drinking a red Gatorade. After wiping my mouth with the napkin, I realized it was the same shade as my evidence of an affair napkin. Edit. Wow, thanks for the love. This happened after literally a few weeks of marriage. I married this woman only after knowing her a few months. 26 years later we are stronger than ever, but when I bring this up, I swear I feel she's not 100% sold on it.
Oh really? Who the F is this Gatorade bitch and why is she in your mouth?
Don't mind me, just looking for my dad's comment.
My dad cheated on my mum after my older sister was born. It was rocky for my parents for a few years after that, but ultimately my mum forgave him and they eventually had me. Then around the time I was 10, my dad had another affair, my parents got divorced, and my dad remarried about a year later. I didn't know any of these details at the time they split up. Last year, I'm 29 now, while having a heart-to-heart with my sister about something else, she asked me if I ever knew about our dad's affair and told me everything she knew about it. It really contextualized a lot for me. The larger-than-average age gap between me and my sister, the strange feelings I eventually recognized as guilt in my dad's behavior when I would see him, and how truly kick-ass my mum was dealing with all that extra baggage while she was raising me as a single parent. Affairs can be extremely painful for everyone involved. I'm proud of the person I am today, and I know my parents' divorce had a huge impact on me, but I definitely wish that my dad's affairs had never happened.
My affair, in the sense it directly affected me, but I was not the person having the affair. We were living in New England at the time. My wife had just started a new job, and I was pretty well entrenched in my career there. We just bought our first house 5 years ago, and I loved it. Things seemed to be going really well. We were both earning good money, our house was beautiful, and our relationship was solid, I thought. Then she decided she didn't want to live there anymore. She missed her mom and her family, and she wanted to go home. She wanted me to be with her, just not there. She told me this via text message, while sending me a copy of an offer letter for a new job that she had interviewed for secretly and told me she was accepting. The emotional crisis was suddenly in full swing, and I was blind to the lead-up. My world was totally rocked. All 3 legs of my milking stool, marriage, career, and home, kicked out from under me in the blink of an eye. She was going, and if I wanted to stay married, so was I. That meant having to sell our home, quit my job, find a new job, find a new home, etc. No small feat. She left at the beginning of winter, and she decided that I would live alone until the spring when the housing market started back up, and we could get top dollar for our property, and have more of a selection to choose from ourselves. I had made it clear that I would only go from a home to another home. Getting the first house was reaching a goal I never thought possible, and I was reluctant to give it up so quickly and go back to renting. I saw that as an absolute crushing failure. Spring is right around the corner, and boom, COVID shows up, which slowed my plans to join her. On top of that, my job, who I had been communicating my struggles with from the start, didn't want to lose me, and was working out a way to keep me on board as a permanent remote worker. This was a time-consuming HR process which only slowed things down more. All in all, we were living apart for about 10 months, while I was riding out the winter, navigating COVID, working with my employer to keep my job, selling our house and buying a new one. We saw each other almost every weekend, but those visits were often difficult. I was bitter about the entire situation, and she was angry with me over my bitterness. 6 months into our new home, she admits to me that she had an affair that lasted for nearly our entire time apart. He was a former college professor of hers, and they had maintained a friendship via Facebook ever since. He was significantly older than her, and recently divorced. He had begun reaching out to her to talk through his troubles, and she, angry with me, was talking to him in turn. She later met him at a conference in Boston, on his invitation, to hear him speak. After his presentation, they shared a drink, then went back to his room. They met up once or twice a week for the 10 months we were apart. While I was hugging my wife's pillow in our empty bed, she was hugging him in his. He, a psychology professor who has authored papers on manipulation, told her she was in the right, that I was an awful husband who should have dropped everyone and everything on a whim and followed her if I didn't want this to be happening. He told her that because I stayed behind to try and keep my job and sell our home, that I was likely never coming, and even an indication that I hated her. Their affair ended when he moved away for a new job, after being fired from his existing job for posing a significant risk to the campus, staff, and students of his employer, i.e. sleeping with students and spitting on another professor during an argument. He wanted her to join him and start a life with him, but she refused. They had sex one final time. He got her pregnant, a feat I had been unsuccessful at despite my best efforts. At least I hope so. She says she is confident it was his and not mine. She aborted the fetus, and never told him. 1 month later, I joined her in a new home that I had bought for us. I often wish she went with him, or at the very least had the courtesy to tell me about the affair before I sold my home, moved to this wasteland I now live in, and committed myself to a future of what basically amounts to house arrest, staying in my tiny home office, all day long, every day, with no coworkers outside of those I see on Zoom calls, and no friends outside of the people I meet on games. The one person I do see every day, my wife. Edit. So, this took off. If you're planning to PM me rude comments, just don't, please. I'm doing my best to work on this in the way I think is best, while protecting myself. I appreciate all the support and kind comments though, they are really helping.
We had been talking through Skype at work over nonsense for a while. One day the conversation started to get a little NSFW in a personal, not sexual way, so we can change numbers and continued the conversation. While still at work we are texting back and forth, she's telling me things she could never say at work because of the environment and so on. A little into the conversation she implies something sexual and all of a sudden we are full out sexting one another. No longer implying but now in full graphic detail going back and forth on the things we do to each other. The end of the day starts to come around and we are trying to conclude things. She suggests I walk her to her car, and that was the beginning of what I would go on for 2 years. We'd go to lunch, then find a spot. Get off of work, find a spot, then head home. Stay late, find a spot. And so on. Being a 22 meters at the time, living with roommates, and generally being broke, I thought this was a great deal. She was also 34 and beautiful, so I never questioned anything. We had this friends with benefits thing going on for 2 years, got a hotel a few times, but again thought it was because of the roommates. This was also extremely secret as we worked directly with each other, and half the fun was pretending there was nothing going on in front of other people. To me this really seemed like a hot fling, and that'd be that. She never mentioned her husband to me or anyone that spoke to both of us, but even so it would have never been a topic because no one knew. I asked her to watch my dog while I went out of town one day. She said sure, we'd meet up after I get off as I stayed late. I had my roommate bring my dog to work before leaving so we didn't have to make an extra trip. We agreed to meet in the building, but I saw her car and decided to just walk to the car instead. Car's still running, so I assume she's in it. Knock on the window and this guy rolled down the window from the passenger's side. I knew who he was before he started speaking. It doesn't help that he knew why I was there and introduced himself as her husband. She had left to go meet me in the lobby, and while we waited for her to return, her husband and I had a conversation. He seemed like a really good guy. Not normal good, but one of those genuinely nice people. I felt sick the entire time. She returns, things get really awkward between me and her, I hand over my dog and we go about our day. Things ended there. We never officially ended it or really talked about it, it kinda just stopped. I eventually ended up leaving that job shortly after. But weirdly enough, she still reaches out from time to time even though it's been years. Edit. I got my pupper back after I returned from my trip. His name is Leo and we are still best buds. Secondly, I never planned to tell her husband or planned to. As crappy as the situation was, their relationship isn't really any of my business. Plus it has been actual years since, it'll be awkward to bring it up now. Lastly, she still reached out as an old friend would. Like checking up on me, seeing how life is going, things like that. We have had no physical contact from that day forward.
Wait, so she kept the dog?
I read the personal columns of the paper in bed.
Did she like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain?
It never did, but I couldn't convince the ex that it didn't. So here I am, a 42-year-old divorced dude trying to start over in the craziest timeline imaginable.
Ever thought the ex was actually having an affair and wanted a clean way out?
Never had an affair because I like to disappoint one woman at a time.
I'm so burned out from disappointing women that there's no way I'd sign up for two simultaneously.
She started telling me about relationship troubles. We grew closer over time, sharing insecurities and whatnot. Eventually we developed feelings, on which we could not act. Eventually, those feelings became too strong and we caved. It lasted for 5 years, me trying to commit to this new thing we developed, her not completely able to let go. She jumped between me and the other. Eventually I realized my committing to and feeling for her were unhealthy. And I realized, too late, that I didn't want to be the person that made someone else cheat.
Reading this really made me realize I am too a part of something like this. Thank you for opening my eyes, lol.
Found out she was cheating on me. Decided to cheat on her as an act of revenge. It did not make me feel any better, pretty much the exact opposite actually. I just felt like I was a piece of poo as well. It was a very short affair. Edit. Not his dad, sorry folks. Sad face.
I once thought about cheating on my ex because he was an abusive piece of poo who constantly cheated on me. But the thought of dragging someone innocent into that mess hurt me. That, and I didn't want to give my ex reason to play the victim. It's better to just leave the situation and be the better person, no matter how much you want to get back at them. Get back at them by leaving and continuing to grow and flourish as a person. That really pisses them off.
I was stuck in a non-physical marriage with a hoarder. Rats were living in the dryer, as example, who didn't keep up with house repairs. Spent 4 months drinking bottled water because the well wasn't safe without work. Couldn't get out because I was 20 kilometers from anywhere, was given a car that didn't run. Coworker usually picked me up for work, or I walked to the closest carpool lot. Cracked under the lonely stress when coworker found me attractive. Turns out my ex was really closeted, hence the hoarding and inability to function. I wasn't running on all cylinders after all that either. He's got a roommate now, the house is fixed, I'm still with coworker after 10 years and we all get together so often. prime example of people who really shouldn't have been married in the first place.
He was too gay to function? I was maybe 12 years old. And I told my mum that my best friend and I were having an affair. I thought affair meant fight. Edit, I just realized, I probably only knew the word because my parents had a long, terrible divorce while I was young. The divorce was because one of them cheated and the other revenge cheated. Staying on message of this miserable thread lol.
This is golden.
So I guess I was just part of it, it wasn't my affair. This was like 12 years ago. I was 19, she was 24 and married, they were in the process of getting a divorce but she sort of failed to tell me they were technically still married. The dude was trying to fix the marriage at the time, which is what I learned eventually, so he eventually found out about me and was rightfully pissed, but not so much at me but at her. I straight up told him she wears no ring and said she was recently divorced. I felt like poo but the sex was incredible lol, lasted like 6 months and I got out of that whole scenario completely.
The wife of a guitarist in a relatively famous band from the early 2000s met me and I was strung along with the "I don't want to be with him" promises, building me up into a jealous man that I promised I'd never be by fueling the seriousness of the affair but also sleeping with other men, and conceding that it was cheating on me, never really addressing that we're doing that, but okay. Was an absolute mindef and the whole thing felt very dirty and degrading. They're not together anymore and she ended up being with one of the 4 guys she was with, had a kid with him, but I still see that husband out. I guess he doesn't know. Or he does and too much time has passed to care. I don't really know him. That poo sent me into a spiral of relationship issues that take heavy management. I've been the other guy a handful of times, but this one really messed me up for a long time.
What I'm gathering from this is that you are every person in Nashville? It didn't. She just thinks it did. Which is really annoying.
Oh poo dude, I've been there, got divorced over it, over something that never happened, but it's 7 years later and she still thinks it did.
Reminds me of my ex Bill. He had it all, and lost it all. Just in case he's still reading my comments, hi Morgan. Merry Christmas, you effing dodgy wanker. Why are you still snooping through my Reddit?
She found a tank top in the laundry that wasn't her size. She threw it at my face, said, "I hope she was worth it," and stormed off. Turns out it was her shirt, that I shrunk, because I'm bad at laundry.
My wife found a hairband on the living room floor that wasn't hers. We don't have daughters and no female friends, family had visited in quite a while. Thankfully she trusted me so I didn't get a crazy accusation like yours, but it was definitely a weird awkward mystery for a while. Then a couple weeks later I was telling the story to some friends and my buddy who sometimes comes over to watch football goes, "Oh yeah, that's probably my daughter's. I keep them in my pockets for her and it probably fell out when I was over for the game." Mystery solved. Oh man, what a relief to have some closure, as it was not a good feeling having zero explanation for it.
Nice try honey.
She knows.
My husband spent a few years trying to talk me into cuckolding, and I told him I'm not that kind of person and that I wanted love and to feel like I was enough for someone. He wouldn't stop asking. It's all he talked about. It ruined our sex life completely. He developed ED and kept suggesting I find someone else. Eventually I did start seeing other people and the rule was never have any feelings for other people, but that's basically the only rule put forward. Anyway, 2 times I fell for someone who told me that I was all they wanted and I was enough for them. He noticed when I started having feelings, or I confessed, and he demanded that I stop, but I didn't. Both of those men were lying completely and seeing other women while telling me that. I initiated a divorce. I don't want to piece together happiness through various people. All I wanted was to just be in one relationship with one man who loves me, and now I'm old and I'll probably never have it.
I was manipulated into an open relationship and it was completely not my thing. All I ever wanted was what you described, one person. I never felt like I was enough. After I broke up with them I felt shattered and that I had wasted so much time. I have eventually found someone who loves me the way I want, but even before that I started to love myself after leaving. You're never too old to start again, and even if you have no one for now, you have yourself. I hope you find happiness, whether that be with yourself or someone else. You deserve it.
She walked onto my side of our shared balcony. I let her inside. She stayed a little while. She started coming over more often, nearly daily. So I started buying her some snacks, some toys. We'd spend as much time as we could before my neighbor noticed she was with me. Rainbow, I miss you XX cat.
People will do anything for P.
I met a married lady while at Myrtle Beach. She was in a crappy marriage, pina colada or two later we were talking. Yada yada. Ended up together for several years. I felt a little bad about the beginning situation, but it was the best years of my crappy life. And hers, I think. Miss her every day. Second wife cheated on me with her girlfriend, and then another guy. Didn't bother me because we were in a bad marriage. Now, I'm happily single again.
But you yada yarded over the best part.
We met at work and started having threesomes with my wife. One thing led to another and we started hooking up without her. Thankfully my wife forgave me and we were able to reconcile. It was the dumbest thing I've ever done. If you're considering cheating, let me assure you, you will either get caught or, hopefully, be so consumed with guilt that you will rat yourself out.
Damn, your wife's cool. She's single?
I was bartending one night. She walked into the bar. She was my perfect type. Tall, slender, dark hair, just gorgeous. My first thought was, please be single, please be single. And she sat down next to her husband. They were married about 6 months. He was a Wall Street banker. She was a nurse. I got to talking to them at the bar and we hit it off. Turns out the guy and I had some mutual friends and grew up near the same suburbs outside of Boston. We went to the same college, but I was older than him by 10 years. Same sports fans, etc. We became friends, all three of us. They kinda had a strange relationship. They literally, and I mean literally, didn't have more than 2 or 3 actual friends. I was one of them. We would do lots of things together, not sexual, just friends. She became pregnant and I became the godfather to her child. I was written in their will, and they told me if they both were to die, they wanted me to raise their kid. Both of their families are all fed up. It's too long of a story to write here, but over the course of 8 years, she and I became close while her husband and I were cordial, but our friendship faded. She and I never cheated. It was an emotional thing. He was distant and dismissive with her feelings, so I kind of became the surrogate boyfriend. She and I would go out to dinner or do other things together, with her kid and without him, and he was fine with it. Even suggested I take his wife and kid on a vacation so he could get a break from being a dad. I loved her, but never crossed the line. Always hoped deep down she would see I was the better guy. Hoped that maybe someday she would leave him. During the summer of 2020 she tells me she's divorcing him. She's had enough. I have heard that before. She's claiming she's serious this time. I kind of brush it off. She's hanging out with me much more. She can't stand being in the house with him. This went on for 3 weeks. I started to realize she was serious and she even had a lawyer lined up, but didn't start the proceedings yet. She felt it was bad timing with COVID. One morning she's working from home, but at my home because she needed space from her husband, and we get to talking. Where we never crossed the line, I initiated the talk about her actually divorcing. And what her post-life might be. She suggested that I would be the kind of guy she would want to date. That turned into more talking and soon we are having frank discussions about dating each other after she's divorced. This went on for about 2 more weeks. We started to text, FaceTime and talk on the phone more. Physically we weren't cheating, but we were going down that road. One morning she's over before work. As a nurse she was going to the hospital some days, and we are talking some more, and I lean in. She leans towards me. We kiss. We were stone cold sober. It was passionate. Really hot. Lasted only a few minutes. She had to get to work. More talking about life after him. It starts to feel like she's at the tipping point of divorcing. Problem is, her kid. She loves him. He's only 6 years old. Feels super guilty about divorcing her husband and ruining her son's life. She doesn't love her husband, but she loves me, and has told me so, and also loves her son. Also, on paper, she has an amazing life. Her and her husband probably make $500,000 combined income. Net worth of $3 million. It's hard to just walk away from that. I do well enough, but I'm just a bartender. Not some Wall Street banker. I have always been smart with my money. I even own my own home and saved up $700,000 in a Roth IRA over the years. While going though the emotional affair, and just kissing each other, it turned into more. Do I feel bad? No. I was under the impression she was just waiting for COVID to end and then she was divorcing him. I'm sure lots of people like me have heard that. I knew her for years, and she couldn't be lying to me. No way. The guilt of what we were doing became too much. The affair lasted about 2 months, and we slept with each other only a handful of times. I told her that I didn't want this. It was around Thanksgiving 2020. Get a divorce. Give me a call. That's how I left it. She texted me a bit and even visited me once mid-December. We only talked a bit. She even told me then, the plan was to get a divorce. I told her to let me know when it happened. Then she ghosted me. I sent her email to her around Christmas. Never heard back. Tried calling her office a week later. Got voicemail. I waited. Weeks turned to months. Never heard a peep from her. We live in the same area of town, never saw her. I didn't push it. I figured with COVID still raging in 2021 that a divorce would be by summertime. I found out in April she was pregnant. I never spoke to her. I'm not sure if it was planned or if he suspected and put a bun in the oven. It's December now, and while I know it's over, I'm still hurting over it. Again, I genuinely felt she was leaving him. I know from the outside looking in, this is easy to scoff over. I was her friend for years before we had an affair. We just had a deep, emotional friendship. I get the anger and hate towards people who are in affairs. But when you are the one in the affair, when you are with the person who you waited for your entire life, it's hard to just think, oh, I'll find someone else. I have dated my life and never met anyone like her. I'm not sure if I would ever again, and I just want some kind of closure. I want to just hear from her what happened. I know logically what happened. I was the side piece, and when I put my foot down, she was out. I never thought I would be the type of person to do that. But like I wrote before, it's hard when you meet someone that great in your life. If I was dating hundreds of awesome women, then whatever, but when you're in your mid-40s, the dating pool dwindles down, even for NYC bartenders. Tinder can be rough. You get bot accounts or lots of people who don't even compare to her. Well, that's my story.
I wasn't happy in my marriage. I was traveling for work and was at dinner with someone else who had traveled into the location. We were the last two out and were talking. I asked about her family. She said her husband was an asshole. One thing led to another, and we started an affair for the next 2 years.
Oh, so like George Clooney in Up in the Air.
That's actually pretty close.
Previous marriage. I caught him constantly going outside our marriage. We went to a few couples counselors, marriage therapy, and one time someone said something that stuck. Quote ellipsis dot. Nobody will ever take care of you, but you. Therefore nobody will really help you fulfill your self-love like you, so it's okay to think about you and be selfish sometimes. In the context of what he spoke about, it makes sense, but I really only took the concept that my husband will never really do the things I hoped. Instead of trying to make him be something I wanted sexually, I chose to be selfish and find someone else.
Met her at my, now ex, wife's birthday party. Asked wife if I could F her and wife said sure. We got along great and started dating, all above board with the wife. Wife eventually gets jealous and says no more. I kept it up behind her back. Eventually dumped the wife due to her coke problem.
This was a wild RJDE.
I really want to see this blow up. I've only ever been cheated on, and never heard an unbiased answer to this question. I want to know what I did wrong.
I'm gonna upvote because I want to see some drama.
Bold of you to think I'm capable of seducing not one but two people.
Exactly. My guy is on the wrong website to think we can seduce anyone.
Started off with a kiss.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.